hope you had a wonderful time.
Yes, I enjoyed.
Good, good. So, the documentary is over, and at this moment, you are going to take some commentaries, questions, or suggestions. And those of you who have no idea what History Month is about, it's actually originated from the United States, and it's a means of celebrating Black achievements. So, in the second week of every February, some time is devoted to achievement by African ancestors. It is celebrated in the United States, United Kingdom, and Canada. And in the United Kingdom and Canada, it is celebrated in October, but in the States, it is done in February. So the Institute of African Studies has this wonderful opportunity, this privilege, to host the film festival for this year's celebration of Black History Month. And it's a series of documentaries we are going to be showing from today to Friday. And Thursday, we are going to be honored by the AU Deputy Chair, His Excellency Ambassador Kwesi Korte. So after this program, when you leave, you make sure you spread the information to your colleagues so that you can have, a much more engaging and a full house tomorrow. So at this moment, we are going to solicit for your ideas. The sense and the ideas that run through your head, the idea of self-resilience, reliance in terms of hard moments. So we are going to take your questions and suggestions and commentary at this juncture. Thank you. And I have with me my boss and an African genius, Dr. Kambon Obadale, who is actually the brainchild of this program here in the University of Ghana. Doc, could you wave your hands when we see you? Okay, so who would want to start for us? I'm sure I saw some people busily writing how the program was going, so I'm sure you have a lot you want us to discuss.
I just want to comment. Today in the newspaper there was a story, and they said part of the coconut they're using to supplement the soil. And they didn't mention that in this movie, but I found that really interesting. How they use all the parts of the coconut. And here they found that they could use part of the parts for amending the soil. Or I think actually in place of the soil in greenhouses.
The plant science department, they actually do that. So that's what they sell right across the road, and they use the mulch from coconuts in order to do that. So they have these raised beds. You can actually go there and see how they use that, and something that is very cutting edge, but it's something that's very effective as well. So that's something that's being done right here in Ghana right now.
Okay, your name please and where you are coming from.
I'm Ezekiel. Ezekiel. I'm coming from East Legon.
East Legon.
Yeah. Okay. I want to know the month. You said it originated from the idea originated from US. That what you said.
Yeah.
Is it a white idea or?
Okay, so the idea was brought forth by an African American historian and writer. His name is known as Carter J. Woodson. He's an African American and he's a historian. So this is not a Caucasian idea. This is coming from somebody with an African descent. The need to appreciate African history and African achievements. So that's got nothing to do with any whites or any European sitting somewhere in the States, but somebody who felt the need to try to sell our history, to try to make people appreciate the extent to which we have come in terms of our sense of development. So it is not coming from any European, but it's coming from an African American, somebody with an African gene. Is your question answered?
And just very briefly, it started off, again, just as Nanayao said, Carter G. Woodson started off as Negro History Week, and then expanded out to what then became known as Black History Month. So it's something that I basically grew up with, And just from even childhood, I remember in first grade, I was 6 years old, they had a test on black history. So school-wide, I won the black history test. But, you know, it's something that even from young, you start to learn about who you are, whose you are, and it's very powerful. And the reason why, you know, I think it's very important for us here in Ghana is that, you know, when I teach the 200 level class, I ask the students about some of, objectively speaking, the most important human beings ever to walk the face of the earth, and they have no idea who they are. But then you start to give them random Europeans, they know each and every one of them. So it let me know that was a needs assessment. So, you know, with this, our theme for this year is African people solving African problems, and that's what we just saw. Now, when you look at the Africans there in Bougainville, and I'm holding the camera, but I'm talking. When you see the Africans there in Bougainville, many of them, what do they look like phenotypically? Look like African people.
Like me.
They look like Nana Yao. Right? This is it. So when we think about African people, oftentimes we're not thinking about the Pacific Islands. You know, even if we start to think about diaspora, automatically we go to US, you know, maybe Jamaica or someplace like this. But many of those people are blacker than anyone you will ever see in Ghana. Look at their hair, they are kinkier than even people who we see here. You understand? It's sometimes because we try to put, you know, things in it to make it look like dog fur, horse fur, things like this. But this is the point that these are African people, these are black people. Now, last year, Chief Benny Wenda, he's from West Papua New Guinea, and they are also being oppressed by the same Papua New Guinea. And he came to African Studies specifically saying, look, we are black, we are Africans, we need help. So he said he wanted to come to Ghana specifically because Ghana was the first to get independence from Britain. So he said, if you can spread our message, so you'll see on my door I have the flag of West Papua New Guinea. You understand? Now, you have people who will get hanged or their heads cut off just from waving that flag there. But when we think about Africa, the AU, the 6th region, the deputy chair of the AU will be here on Thursday. This is a friend of mine says he's the vice president of all of Africa. That's basically what he serves as, deputy chair to the whole AU. And what we really have to do is understand the global African family, which is the global black family. You understand? When we can have a situation where Haiti can be denied full membership in the AU, but we can have Arabs who are our very first imperialists and oppressors, that means our education system from bottom all the way up to the highest echelons of leadership is backwards. Mekamui should be part of the AU before any Morocco, which has just rejoined. You understand? But when you don't understand who you are, anyone who has come and colonized and stolen your land, you will call them African. You understand? So there's a proverb in Wolof, Lubant Yagachindo, Dutak Musopa Likumuk Jasik. And that translates to no matter how long a log stays in water, it will never become a crocodile. So if your very first imperialists have been here for 1,000 years and they are on stolen land, you have to recognize that that is still your land, and that gives you a destiny, a mission. So we just saw what the Africans there in Bougainville had done. When someone came and stole their land, they took action. And I gave a talk last year as well on Capoeira, Ngolo, all these African fighting systems that we know nothing about. We know karate, we know taekwondo, we know everything that any Eurasian has ever done, but we don't know the ones that we have here and how effective they are. And the question was, oh, well, you know, this thing you're talking about fighting, blah, 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 but what, there are drones now. There are all this technology. How could you possibly, you know, beat them? If you have this, you can start off with a sling with an arrow in it. And what you will realize is that all they're doing is just holding onto your weapons for you until they hand them over. So if they're in a helicopter, you say, thank you, bring the helicopter, that's for me. If they have machine guns, you say, come here. So if you have this one, and that's what the combat sciences will teach you, you just wait on the side of the road for someone with a machine gun. You understand? Then use that machine gun to get another machine gun. You get that one, all they're doing is arming you because you have this. But you have to have that will and that understanding that you are African and that this land is for you. Now,
I'll open it back up to the floor, but I thought that definitely needed to be said for us to understand we have brothers and sisters all throughout the world. In places like India, southern India, you found black people who are blacker than any Ghanaian you will see, except for Nana Yao maybe. You understand? But these are our brothers and sisters. We have to know the global African presence. Then when we start talking about allies, we can talk about allying with our own selves. We number well over 1 billion on the face of the planet, but yet and still we're trying to have allies in Russia, allies with the Arabs, allies with every single person except for ourselves. But our first ally, how can you love someone else when you have no self-love? When you've been taught not to love yourself? So let's put it back out. Any other ideas that came from this? And I'll go back to the camera and let my man, Nana Yao,
Cover the discussion?
Okay.
Yes, my name is Kyle. One idea that struck me from the documentary is of self-reliance. We saw using their environment, some of the agriculture, the farming they're doing. They're growing different kind of tubers, sweet potatoes, cocoyam. They're growing plantain, bananas. So they're cultivating to sustain their community. So I felt that was important, and also using some of nature's resources, coconut from the title, which you saw had so many different kind of uses. They're producing oil from it. They're using for light, lantern, also as a source of food. So yes, also coming back to being able to, as communities, to produce a means that are self-sustaining.
Very good point.
Yeah. Something that particularly strikes me is this whole idea of trying to change a mentality. It's some kind of mental warfare. Just like how African economic structures have been modeled on the basis of colonialism, so that to the extent that you consume what you produce and produce what you don't consume. Okay, but these people are trying to turn things around. Okay, because the moment you continue to dependent on the colonial economic structure, you are always going to be over-dependent on them, and that is the means by which they can regulate your lifestyle. So you see, in the documentary, they were saying that they were happy that the blockade had happened because it has given them some sense of what? Innovation. To the extent that they wish the blockade had what? Continued. Because the more people are pushed to the corner, the more they are forced to be innovative and take control of what? The environment. Something that also particularly strikes me is the idea of land grabbing. You see how they suffered there? That was not their story. The same thing happened in Kenya. Now the thing is that when you are doing something and the Europeans or the Caucasians are showering praise on you, then it means you are doing it at the detriment of your people.
Exactly.
And you are dancing to their tune.
Right.
So when people rose up in Kenya and they were fighting for their land, we saw how the British retaliated with brutality in what you call the Mau Mau issue. We saw how the Italians also massacred the Ethiopians in 1935 in what you call the Ekazit. We were not there, but that is what the annals in the issue tell us. In fact, there is this school of thought that says that the issue of German genocide did not actually start with the Jews. Because you know how in 1904 and 1908, they massacred the Hereros and the Nameks in Southwest Africa, which is now known as Namibia. So this issue of land grabbing and trying to always massacre a group of people to take something, one thing about Africa is Africa has always had something that people didn't have, they wanted and they couldn't get, and so they had to take it with force. So I think the issue of reliance, resilience, and steadfast, it teaches us something, that you are not watching this documentary because it's a documentary in Black History Month, but it's telling you to have some kind of retaliatory force within you. So I think, I mean, just to add to what he said, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's a really brilliant point you just made about
Can you
highlighting.
introduce yourself?
My name is Sela Kojoaje. I'm an artist and I'm also a researcher. And I'm also a participant for the Black History Month. We just opened an exhibition at Brazil House just on Tuesday. Also speaking about the same thing but through a visual narrative. So there are over 40 artworks there, including paintings, sculptures, and installations. So if you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend that you go and see it. And what Nanaya was talking about is what I essentially capture through my visual narrative. I try to reimagine some of the things Nanaya will say through a visual narrative. So most of my paintings try to capture the massacre, genocide, atrocities, and all these brutal murders that's been inflicted, not only being inflicted, but has been inflicted on Africans throughout the ages. And this is not really captured in our visual narratives that much because people think it's horror, it's too horrible. But it's something that needs to be preserved thoroughly, not only through books, poems, literature, but through a visual narrative so that people can see. It has to be preserved for posterity so that people can learn vital lessons from it. So I think it's a really brilliant point that you make.
Adding to what my brother said, I think the main reason why they did that was to preserve the land for posterity. And then when you go to the Ashanti region and then the Western region, the same things are happening over there. The Chinese come and then they take over the land, they give a tip to the chiefs, and then they allow them, they give the lands to them, whereby the natives used to farm on those lands. They will take away those lands, give it to the Chinese. They destroy the land, they destroy the water bodies. Then after all, they leave the country, they leave, they don't stay over there. And then the natives and then the ancestry that follows suffers. So I think this documentary should be watched by some of the chiefs in those areas so that you will have a change of mentality.
Excellent point.
Okay, I'll get back to you. Okay, let me take this point. Yeah, please.
Oh yes, from watching the, first of all, my name is Seifu Oba Asani Uhuru. Most people know me as Power. And I had watched the Coconut Revolution once before in the diaspora in the United States. And the one thing that sticks out with the Coconut Revolution is a statement that comes from Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. When a people fail to organize themselves, situations will. The situations that organized the people in Papua New Guinea was the actual coming of the mining company. So what's happening now in the diaspora in the United States, what we're happen to be captured at right now is that the mining company is coming in the form of Donald Trump. And it is forcing people to migrate, it's forcing people to start to grow their own food. It's forcing people to be faced with the fact of coming back to their motherland to try to repatriate, to understand where their rightful place in the sun is. So it's the same thing that's happening here in Ghana as well. We have the Chinese, like the sister said, they come in, they rape the lands, they take the women, they empty their prisons here. The same thing with the Lebanese from 50, 60 to 100 years ago. They come here, they make us feel subservient to them in our own lands. So the time is now for us to understand who our oppressor is and no longer have the fear of engagement with that oppressor. Because as long as we have the fear of engagement of that oppressor and the embracement of his religious faction, we will never stand, we will never break those holes. So that's why I'm here. I'm here as a representative from the diaspora to show you that we are no different than each other. We are the same people worldwide. I've been all over the world, and I will continue to go and find the places where black people are, African people are, and we think that we're from New England, or we think we're from New Guinea. We're African people that happen to be around the world. So we should embrace that thought and continue to press it forward.
Very good point.
I wanted to ask this question, that as we can see now, our political setup in Africa, we think now we have self-governance in Africa, but we've been bequeathed with something known as democracy. Let's say Britain. The way we are practicing democracy here in Africa, is that the same way they are doing in Africa? And is it helping us? How should we do it? Because sometimes even a single person can come up so economically strong, tries to do something and help the African black continent. But they'll put some clauses that will not help the person's economic growth, naming it bureaucratic rules and democracy, which is totally not helping. So in this direction, what do we do? What can we do to break these bounds? What do we have to do? What's the way going forward?
Okay. I think that if your enemy is the one who gives you solutions to your problems, you will have a very, very long and hard time.
There's a proverb from the oldest book in the history of humanity. Does anyone know what that oldest book in the history of all human beings is? One. That's how you know that this is my guy. So the oldest book in the history of all human beings was written right here in Africa, and that's the reason why you don't know. If it was written somewhere else, that's all you would ever hear about every single day. The Instructions of Ptah-hotep. The Instructions of Ptah-hotep. It's the oldest surviving book, even though the Instructions of Kagimni and Harjadef came before, also written right here in Africa. But in that book, it says, one who listens to his belly belongs to the enemy. That's the oldest book in the history of the world. It's telling you what to do right now, today. It has the answer to your question. One who listens to his belly belongs to the enemy. And what it's talking about is created tastes and desires. You understand? Your enemy will give you something and get you to have such a taste for it, whether it's white rice, whether it is Brazilian fur, whether it's Eurasian Obruniwawu clothes. And they're giving you things not to help you, but to help them. It's just like the Anansi story. It's just like Ijakba stories. He's doing something to help himself and not to help you. So what happens, let's look at another example. What happens when your enemy selects your heroes for you? Then you get a statue of Gandhi on your campus. Meanwhile, you haven't heard of Francis Ona, who defeated Australia, Papua New Guinea, and one of the largest mining companies on the face of the planet Earth, who could give you inspiration of how to solve your own problems, but you don't even hear that person's name, much less do you have a statue on campus. Has anyone here heard of Gaspar Yanga? This is one of the earliest republics, free republics in the history of the Western Hemisphere, founded in what's now modern-day Mexico. He was a revolutionary leader and led that in the 1500s, right? I hope people I know, I'm going to get some, have heard of Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Yes. There we go. Where was Dessalines from? Haiti. Right? So this was a leader. Now, let me ask another question. Who's ever heard of Napoleon? So Jean-Jacques Dessalines fought Napoleon. Who do you think won?
Dessalines.
Dessalines won. Who do you think lost then?
Bonaparte.
So how come we have full coverage for Napoleon and only partial coverage area
Dessalines.
for Dessalines? That's intentional, because your enemy is selecting your heroes for you. You understand? So all these revolutionary leaders, I can mention Charles Dessalines. Have we heard of him? That's the leader of what was called the German Coast Uprising, one of the largest uprisings in the face of on the entire United States. I can mention Zumbi dos Palmares. We got partial coverage area, right? This was another early free republic in the Western Hemisphere. And when I say free, I'm not including the United States, because slavery still exists in the United States. It's never been free. You could look at a documentary called 13th, that according to the 13th Amendment, as long as you have been convicted of a crime, you can be a slave. It says slavery shall not exist in these United States except if you have been convicted of a crime. So now all these people who you're getting to work for free before, all we have to do is say you committed a crime, you're sitting here, that's loitering, that's a crime. Come and work, a death sentence. Drain these swamps. You understand? Build these railroad tracks for free. You understand? So there are more black people who are enslaved through the prison industrial complex than were in the border states in 1865. still working for free. But we have to know the names of those who fought back and those who won. And those are our heroes. There's a reason why they give you Gandhi, why they give you Mandela, and why they give you Martin Luther King. Not the version of Martin Luther King who opposed the war in Vietnam, the I have a dream that we all hold hands with white girls and white boys. You understand? So this is a tripartite of your enemies giving you your heroes. But the ones who should be your heroes, the ones who fought back, Mark Essex. Do we know that name?
Yeah.
Right? Do we know the name of Nat Turner?
Yep.
Denmark Vesey?
Yep.
Huh? These are the names that you should have statues of every single person I've mentioned. Jehuti Mess. Do we know that name?
Yeah.
This was one of the greatest military strategists in the history of the entire planet Earth, who went from Kemet, that's land of black people, and went into southwestern Eurasia and took the war to the Hyksos. Yamos, have we heard that name? That's the one who drove the Hyksos out of the land of black people. You understand? So these are the names of the Africans who we should know. Those who understood who they were and who their enemies were. It's both sides of the coin. You have to know yourself. You have to know your enemy. Imagine I'm an antelope, and here comes a lion, and I think this is my friend. And I just saunter right up to the lion. What do you think is going to happen to that antelope? It doesn't know itself that I'm supposed to be scampering and running in the opposite direction, and also it doesn't know its enemy, right? So what happens, but you let the Chinese in? Right here at African Studies, Institute of African Studies, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had a delegation for an entire week of all Chinese students to help them get their pathway into Africa. We don't even have that. But this is what happens. This is why we need a real educational system. You understand? Otherwise, you'll be welcoming in your new oppressor, right? The way India got that statue here is because there's money behind the deal. They said that the interaction, trade, and everything else will go up to $5 billion. Now, if you have no knowledge of self, then you'll just bend right over and give evil an opening. But you're supposed to stand up. Any interaction should be based on mutual respect. So if you bring us this racist who called you 1 degree removed from an animal, picture 360 degrees on a circle and you're 1 degree removed from an animal. Is there a real difference there? That's your guy who fought against the Zulus and was promoted to sergeant major to fight against the Zulus. He went back to his place and he disenfranchised the Dalits. That's the black untouchables who are still there in India, who are subjected to rape, being burned alive, because if your shadow touches my shadow and you're of the Dalit caste, then we have to burn you alive. We have to rape your wife. This is what's happening to the black people who are in India right now. And now continental Africans are starting to bear the brunt of that, because just last year, a Congolese was there and he got bludgeoned to death in broad daylight. Because the same thing you do with your indigenous black people is what you do to other black people who come there. So now India comes here and we don't hear it. We have guards on the Gandhi statue 24/7. That's what they did. But there's no outcry from the Ghana government about these Africans who are being killed, lynched every day. You can look at this on the BBC. This isn't secret information. But where's the outcry? You understand? So that's what it boils down to. If your enemy gives you your solutions, guess what those solutions are going to be? If a snake gives you an idea of how to defend yourself from a snake, do you think you will have a very good defense? I'll turn it back over to Nana Yao.
Any suggestion, please? Any question?
So now, the thing is, what is the way going forward? What must we do?
No. Is that me again?
I think, let me just go on ahead and try. Steve Biko said the most powerful weapon in the hands of the oppressed is the mind of the oppressor.
Hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed.
Exactly. The most powerful weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So I think you need some kind of mental decolonization. Okay, right from within you, there are certain things that you need to strip yourself off. Do you get it? Once again, I would want to quote a favorite a quote that I really love to quote. It says, what you do for yourself depends on what you think of yourself. What you think of yourself. And what you know of yourself depends on what you've been told of yourself. The point is that, what have you been told about yourself as an African? Okay, right from infancy, you have to get to a certain level at the university stage before you are taught about Africa. Okay, so you know nothing about Africa until you get to somewhere 18 years. And you expect University of Ghana to use 2 months to teach you UDRC, to disarm you of the miseducation that you've been given right from what? Infancy. It is very difficult to do that. So I think we need to set within ourselves and start a thorough mental decolonization. We've been miseducated. My boss says anti-education. So we need a kind of education that will put us on the path of what? Self-conscience. To start, from scratch, you need some kind of mental decolonization. So I think at that point, I'll leave for Dr. Conway to continue.
Yes. I think it's a very good point that he made. I think that we start from the one who you're looking at in the mirror. And one thing that we can do is produce what we consume and consume what we produce. That's what each and every person can do. I gave a talk a few months ago called Make Africa Great Again. Divest from America, invest in Africa, right? What we see is that through our actions, through our choices, through our tastes and desires, listening to our belly, right? What we do is that we finance our oppressor, right? So let's say that what they're doing is that they're building prisons, right? And when I'm talking about the oppressor, I'm talking about Eurasians in general. So that's the whites, who we call Europeans. I'm talking about the new Chinese, the white Indians who are the oppressors of the black Dalits, all these folks. Eurasia is one thing. When I ask my students how many continents are there, some of them call Europe a continent. And not realize that Europe is just the rump of Asia. Where is the split? You understand? So what I'm getting at is, when we understand that all we're doing is financing our oppressor, let's say, for example, you want to make your hair look like the fur of a horse. Someone is going to take that same money that you've given to them to build the prison. You're saying you don't like seeing your people shot down dead in the streets, but aren't you buying the bullets every single time you say, I have a taste for this, I have to wear obruniwewu, I have to do this, I have to wear these types of shoes, I have to go and pray to this imaginary white man and give money every week? You understand? All you're doing is you're propping it up. If you just remove the props, the thing can fall. Imagine if just any one single choice, we say we're not wearing any Eurasian clothes ever again. One choice from all of Africa. Every problem, just one. I'm not saying every single thing, just that one thing, all those props, the thing will collapse. Because it's dependent on you, right? So the way forward, I would say, for you and for me and for each of us, is to say, how can I divest from my enemies? If I know that this is what they're doing in Mekamui, if I know this is what they're doing in Ghana, if I know this is what they're doing in the US, this is what they're doing in Cuba. We talked about an African in Germany who was burned alive by the police. Serve and protect, right? Another one whose spine was severed in the UK, right? We talk about the Baltimore one. This is all over the planet. So when we see this, we can start taking small steps. And those steps, when we all take them, my drawers are made by African people, right? If only you like. Let me. Now, Dr. John Henrik Clarke, you should note that name if you don't know the name already. He said, a people who can't make their own drawers cannot run a nation. A people who cannot make their own drawers have no business running a nation, right? This means that you are dependent down to the drawers. That's a choice. Because this was a cloth I got in Abeokuta in 2003. It used to be a flowing agbada, but when it got old, I took it to the seamstress, and she made it into drawers. So I had a choice. but it's only this that told me to do something different. I can either go to Haynes, which is part of the prison industrial complex, which has a vested interest in African people being charged wrongly just so they can work for free. I could say, let me just buy Haynes, it doesn't matter. And that exact same Haynes money is buying, what, another bar in the prison cell? Or I can say, let's depend on ourselves. So for each and every person, I would say, look at yourself. Stop saying, oh, if the AU does something, if the Ghana government does something. The Ghana government is nothing but each and every one of us who gets elected. So now when they take their vacation, their holiday to Dubai, what is it but you who wants to do that, but you just don't have the power yet? You understand? When you then get the power, you will do the exact same thing. But if you, as an intelligent African, is doing what's intelligent, then when you get that power, you will see that transformation we're looking for. All it took was one Kwame Nkrumah.
Yeah, to add to what Nanaya was saying about decolonization, which is really, really important. I think when Professor Lumumba came to Ghana, he stressed on decolonizing the academy, which he thought is the way forward. Now, Erasmus gave a quote and he says, the main hope of a nation lies in the proper education of its children. And the question we need to ask is, what is education? When you study the etymology of education, it simply means rearing children, breeding children, training children. So if education is all about training children the right way, how come we don't have so many children's libraries? How come we don't have a lot of educational facilities for children? How come we don't have creative centers for children? Why are our children being miseducated if education is about training the minds of the young ones? I think we need to put more importance on shaping the minds of our children in their formative stages, rather than wait for them to grow where their brain has been fully formed before we start the decolonization process. It is important for them to be trained right from the formative years, which Nanaya has mentioned. And I think we really need to put much emphasis on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Along those same lines, myself and my wife and a few others, we have an African-centered homeschool collective called Abibi Fahundi Adesuabia. And in it, we teach them all subjects in Chi. That's biology, botany, science, mathematics, everything that you say cannot be done in an African language, even though your African ancestors invented each and every one of these disciplines. The oldest mathematical instrument dating over 35,000 years ago was right here in Africa. I will have your homework be to find out what that mathematical instrument was. Right? The second oldest was also right here in Africa, dating to 22,000 years ago. So for us to say you can't do mathematics in an African language and you invented mathematics is letting us know that we need the decolonization. And this is what the youth who are part of our school get from this young. My son is 3 years old. This is what he gets from this young, right? Because it's better to build strong children than to repair broken adults. Right? So many of us think we have to pray to this imaginary white man, the image of Caesar Borgia, Pope Alexander VI, illegitimate son who was known for incest, known for rape, known for murder. That's Caesar Borgia. That's the image you see on the back of your trotro. Look it up. Dating from the late 1490s, that's the image that you get all teary-eyed and dewy-eyed about and get down on your knees. If he was alive and you got down on your knees, you will see what he would do to you. Right? You look at the Last Supper, and it is documented historical fact that what they did was get a whole bunch of jailbirds because they were the ones who had the time to sit and pose over multiple days. And we have an art historian. I think he knows all of this information. Right? This is all documented fact, but how come you didn't come up from youth knowing this? When you go throughout Europe, you'll see the Black Madonna and Child. right? You can't turn left or right without stumbling over one. So how come when they brought you the picture of Jesus, they didn't bring that one? It's still there to this day. Go to Czechoslovakia, go to Portugal, go to Spain. You will see all these images of a black Jesus. Because they just stole it directly from the story of Heru. So how come now, when they're coming to Africa, they don't bring you the black one? They bring the one that they just thought up a few years ago in the 1490s. So these are the things that we have to start thinking about. You understand? When we're talking about decolonization, we can just sit and talk all day, but we have a school. We're doing it right now. Right? If I'm talking about produce what you consume and consume what you produce, I'm doing it right now, down to my shoes. Him too. And I see him every day, all the time. This is what this brother is about. So if we keep waiting for, it's like we might as well wait for Caesar Borgia to come down from the sky. If we're waiting for the government to suddenly become all conscious. When all of them have gone through the same indoctrination that each and every one of you have gone through. They know Napoleon, they don't know Dessalines. That's each and every one of them. So what do you expect them to do for themselves when they've never learned that they've ever done anything of value? They don't know that they invented writing, the oldest writing system on the history of the planet Earth, right here in Africa. Medu Neter, we have a study group every Friday, so you can learn to read the words of your ancestors without European interpreters. And when you do, you will see that they were very clear on who they were. They call themselves Kemet, land of black people. And they took action against these Eurasians who kept trying to invade Africa. They blocked them. They built what they called the walls of the ruler to keep them out. They were clear. But nowadays, those who aren't clear, they come and bring them and say, oh, can we help you with your Galamsey operation? You understand? So it comes from you. It starts from you. Stop looking for government, for AU, for everything else. Think about what can I change right now? When I give birth to my children, will I name my child Kofi? Will I name him, what, you name it, Charles Benjamin, son of whatever. You understand? Think about what are you going to do about your own name. Because most times I was born in the diaspora, and people ask me, when did you change your name to an African name? I was born with an African name. I've never had a Eurasian name. But then I ask them, when are you going to change yours to an African name? Because most times I come here, people introduce themselves, oh, I am Ethel. I am all these old white names that you don't even hear anymore. I'm Gertrude. I'm like, this sounds like someone's old white grandmother in Kansas somewhere. That's not a real name. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? But they don't know to be ashamed of yourselves, right? Some people have names that are dog names. These are the names that white folks give their dogs. But we say, oh, my name is Happy. You name your dog Happy. But it's just, let's pick anything from the dictionary. Just throw a dart, boom, that's my child's name. If it's English, it's a name. And you're not getting a real sense of what your destiny should be, what your allegiance should be to, right? Your descendants to whom you owe allegiance. That's what they were very clear on in the video, in the documentary. They said, we're doing this so that our descendants will not say that you failed us. You understand? So this is what we're working on. Start from there.
All right.
My name is Ngogba.
Okay.
Like forward. I was very happy with that. It's a coconut revolution. So I came across their cross and a documentary. And I got bored with just everything. The Christian religion, the cross, is a very powerful weapon in the hands of the white man against the black man. Like, everybody should know that just for fact. It's there. And there was one man who had a shot with his arm being split by bullets, and I got healed over, and he was saved by the Lord. Which Lord? How many battles have they not fought in the name of Christ? How many massacres and genocide went down on this earth in the name of what? Jesus Christ or the Lord? So when did the Lord start saving people from our battle and genocides? Name any battle in this world that has been saved by the Lord. And then you can name many battles that have been like fought in the name of the Lord. People who have been killed in the name of the Lord. So when I saw the cross, I was like, what was that?
Contradiction.
And then it's going to go down, like the man, I don't know if the leader is like taking it forward, and it's going to go down and affect the coming generation. But I saw some points at the point that like he was using some medicine that was like, if there's a blockage in the flow of blood, it will stick there. But if it's normal, and like, this is what your ancestors left for you.
Right.
This is what you can work with.
That's what saves you.
Yes.
I was just angry with that.
Because
But like, I just don't blame him because he went through an educational system to high school and he has been indoctrinated with this. So I knowing a bit of psychology, I got the point from which like he's been affected by. And then let me get to this point too. If your mind is the arm, you will never and ever be disarmed. If your brain is the weapon, there's no way you will ever be disarmed. That is to the point where they were using their mind to build sling and then arrow. And the next thing you can't have to is make sure your body is a weapon. The gun is just like an aid. It's just going to help you. Make sure this and then the body works together. But I don't know. When I just heard him giving all praises to God, I'm like, what? A whole lot of things happen in the name of this Lord. And I have renounced Jesus Christ and the Father.
Yes.
Congratulations. Welcome to
I'll get back.
Let me add something real quick to what he was saying. He's not lying, it's true. Because if you study the history of the church and the ecclesiastical, yes, the ecclesiastical reforms they brought about in the name of the Lord, the violence alone. Now this is a church that put a lot of philosophers and free thinkers books on the Catholics banned book lists. For example, they put Niccolò Machiavelli's books on the Catholic banned books lists. And the Jesuit missions were using Machiavellian tactics to suppress people and to coerce them to accept Jesus Christ. Now, why would you ban someone's book when you say his ideas are corrosive, and then you go behind, read that book, and use those theories for your purpose? You can read about the Spanish Inquisition, like he said, the atrocities they committed in South America, Mesoamerica, in the so-called third world countries and other places. And even when you study terrorism, terrorism is actually rooted in religion. Not only Islam, but Christian. There's terrorism in Christianity too. They have a theory called the just war theory. You can go and look for it, where they justify violence and war in a sense that what they say is you commit violence on a less scale to save more souls for Christ. That's the just war theory in a nutshell. So you can go and read about it. And if you really doubt all these things, go to the Bible itself, which condones violence, not only of men, of women, of children who are not so-called part of God's chosen ones. You can look for it. Go to Leviticus. You find it there. I can give you exact Bible quotations. You go and find it there. And there is the commandment that says thou shalt not kill. Originally it means thou shalt not kill a Jew. Now you should bear in mind that the Bible has gone through several editions. They've edited so many things out. Thou shalt not kill originally meant that it read thou shalt not kill a Jew. Now if you go to that same Bible, if you think I'm lying, there's another chapter, another verse that has been retained. in which the leaders of the Jews were instructed to go to certain villages, burn, kill, murder, rape people who don't have the mark. They talk about this mark, who don't have the mark on their forehead. You can go to the Bible and you find all these things there. So he's not lying, he's actually saying what is exactly the case.
Thank you.
I actually have an article I'm working on now that goes into some of the tactics that we used early. And you have to be reminded that it's only a very recent phenomenon to act like, oh, this nonviolence thing is whatever. That what they used to do when they would go to a people and defeat them and kill them by whatever means that they had available to them, they said, because we were successful, that means that we had approval from God. The papal bull between Portugal and Spain said, reduce to servitude all infidel people, right? So during all that time, after they win the war, then they say, that means that God was on our side because we just slaughtered this entire village of people. This shows that we had a holy thing on our side. You understand? But now you have a revisionist type of thing. You understand? But all of this is very well documented. The question that you need to ask yourself is, how come I haven't come across any of these documents? That's the point. That's the point.
Okay.
Yes. One brother asked, what's the way forward? And I attended one lecture by Dr. Badele Kambon where he mentioned the way forward is to re-Africanize and whitenize. Yes, where he presented a paradigm. He mentioned certain areas like psychology, culture, politics, economics, whatever that you do. He said, observe who originates it, then you can determine who benefits from it. So whatever we want to continue doing as Africans from henceforth, let's observe who originated this. Then we'll know, should we practice this, who ultimately benefits from that. Whilst we try to re-Africanize and de-whitenize, that is, become Africans again, and to remove or to detox anything that our enemies have inoculated into us. For me, I think that's the way forward.
Thank you. I mean, I think
You were paying attention.
as much as you can as much as you can go biblical and provide an avalanche of evidence to support what you are saying, I mean, you could just examine the whole colonial system and slavery and expose the hypocrisy that came with it. It's just unthinkable. Just like Jomo Kenyatta said, they came with the Bible and they told you to close your eyes. By the time you open your eyes, they gave you the Bible and they are taking what? The land. How can you have a church and right beneath the church you have a slave dungeon? In the name of Christianity, what kind of hypocritical religion is that? I mean, you could go on and expose the hypocrisy within capitalism, Christianity, and slavery. And if you read Eric Williams's Capitalism and Slavery, he alludes to these kind of, argument. So even if you want to move beyond the biblical argument and look things contextually within a kind of contemporary world, you can clearly expose the hypocrisy that is embedded within Christianity. I mean, we saw what happened in the Crusade. The Crusade was as treacherous and more deadly and more devastating, the same way as you have the jihad. In the name of Islam, in the name of Christianity, we saw what happened in the Ma'afa. So, I mean, these are arguments that you can make in addition to the biblical context of issues that, you can draw up just to add to the biblical argument you are making. Yes, Kwame.
Okay, thank you very much. I want to know whether we can Africanize Christianity. Because obviously, like, let's take Ghana for instance. Most of Ghanaians are Christians. And for
sorry, what do you mean Africanize it?
African, make it African. Like he said, draw out the white elements from that religion and make it more tailored to the African needs. What are some of the ways in which we can do that? because most of Ghanaians are already in the religion, and I think to deconstruct their minds and to go or maybe forgo that religion, I think it would be a Herculean task. So how can we make it more African?
A response or a question?
No, just to answer it.
Okay.
My name is Cooper from USC. I want to know, someone once told me the real Jews are blacks. How true is that? I don't know.
I think I'll come in. We've actually had an ongoing discussion online on Habibi Tumikasa entitled, "What was Israel in relation to black people?" So what you call Egypt was called Kemet indigenously, which means land of blacks. Now, the very first mention of Israel anywhere in history,
Hold on 1 second.